Hello, friends. Welcome to the second ever No Coast SciComm Science Slam. And especially welcome to my celebrity co-host, Dr. Raven the Science Maven, aka the Electron Cloud. So,
Yay!
background. Raven and I decided that we're an iconic science duo. So we needed to have a costume that would reflect an iconic science duo. And so we had various ideas, and one of them was the duo without which no matter or life would exist, protons and electrons, right? So Raven was like, I'll be an electron, I can do an electron cloud. And then I was like, oh crap, that means I have to be a proton. So here's how it went down. I owe two citations for this costume, in fact. And this isn't the end of it. This is just the beginning, friends. I regret to inform you that this is just the beginning. My proton costume is based on the Quanta magazine article, Inside the Proton, the most complicated thing you could possibly imagine. So I had an hour and a half today to create a costume of the most complicated thing you could possibly imagine, because I've been doing other things, as we tend to do, and I procrastinated. And so this is me, 47 years old. My mom and I live together. So I come running downstairs and I say, Mom, I have an hour and a half to make a proton costume. I have left a path of destruction in my wake, as protons tend to do too, like an high energy proton beam. So there are going to be some costume changes. The old positive charge, one positive charge, is one version of what a proton is, but it turns out that what a proton is really depends on what questions you want to ask. So it's going to get a little weird. We're gonna see how it goes. I should say, in the tradition of academic citations, neither Quanta nor my mom is responsible for any errors in the content of my costume, but we're gonna roll with it. So if you have not attended a science slam before, this is a really cool kind of format where scientists share their work in short, engaging, not to put too much pressure on you all, presentations that are really more of a story than anything. And in the ideal model of a science slam, then like people, the public, you all, the audience, vote to decide the winner. So one of the things that I love about doing a live stream science slam is that we can actually reach a lot of people and have a big audience and a truly representative audience. And so these slammers are going to be held accountable. If they don't do a good job explaining their stuff, then you're going to be like, no, not voting for you. However, they are all going to be amazing. So that's not going to be the case. But given the fact that the timing is so close to Halloween, we decided to lean in to the Halloween theme and ask our slammers to share their scary science stories. But first, I want to ask you, Raven, do you have any good scary science stories? I'm sure you have a lot. Any come right to mind?
Oh my gosh. Spilling mercaptoethanol in the lab, beta mercaptoethanol. And if anyone is not familiar with that, it is probably one of the worst smells that will ever smell. It has to be used under a fume hood. It smells like rotten eggs, but like rotten eggs times a million. And the smell doesn't go away. It just stays. It just stays. So don't spill it. It will be very scary for you and everyone else. Yeah.
Cautionary tale for sure. Okay, so we're gonna get this party started. We have six slammers who are going to be slamming today, and they're each going to have 5 minutes to share their scary science stories with you. So think of this as like the virtual campfire where we're all gathered around telling scary stories. And I know we're gonna get some snakes in here. We're gonna get some bugs. We're gonna get some bad science teachers. Oh, that's scary. So we're gonna get a whole lot of interpretations of what scary science story means, which is part of what I'm excited about for this. And we have slammers from across the country. Our first slammer, I'm delighted to introduce, is Jody Green with Nebraska Extension, and her slam is entitled "Stop and Think Before You Step on a Bug."
So, my scary story starts in this very place where I'm standing right now. I'm in the Douglas County Extension office here in Omaha. And about 5 years ago, just outside my office door, walking across the carpet was a cricket. This is the prop. This is the cricket. So, it's not too odd to see a cricket this time of year. So, in October, it's our crickiest, is that a word? cricket heavy time of year. They seem to get in under, gaps of the doors, and I'm the urban entomologist here, so I should know. But at this time, I thought, oh my gosh, it's my lucky day. And I scooped it up because I'm a catch and release kind of person. I am the self-proclaimed president of the spider relocation program. I've got these all over the place so people know how to catch and release. And I practice integrated pest management. Cue the net. So the only time I collect arthropods is for teaching purposes or to feed arthropets. And I've been known to rescue tarantulas, rescue black widow spiders, and hitchhiking scorpions that get to Omaha. So I collected this for my tarantula highly suspect, which you can see one of the players in my image there. And she was ready to eat. The moment I dropped that cricket in to the habitat, she grabbed it with her pelts and stuck her fangs in it. And immediately, on instant, this slender hair-like worm came out of her butt. It was completely horrifying, but I was so fascinated because I'm a scientist. So I have heard of these hairworms before, parasitizing terrestrial arthropods, cockroaches and beetles, grasshoppers, and praying mantises. But that was the last thing I thought of when I grabbed this wild cricket. I was just thinking, oh great, I get to save that 17 cents a cricket at the pet store and save the drive. I was not successful in getting the cricket away from highly suspect, so I took some forceps and I removed not one but 2 horsehair worms. And these are the actual worms that came out of her butt. They were twisting and writhing and turning into this bundle of contorting knots. And here's my, this is kind of what it looked like. I was not, so these hairworms, they belong to the phylum Nematomorpha, and they are called gordiids. They are tightly tangled coil, resemble a ball of white hair, which is super gross to think of. This is called a mating knot or a Gordian knot. And these gordiids are commonly known as horsehair worms because they look like horsehair. And long ago, people thought that if a horse hair was dropped in a trough of water, that they would spontaneously come to life and become worms, which is not true. There are over 350 described species of horsehair worms. Adults are free living in freshwater environments. They can lay millions of eggs in these long, sticky, gelatinous strings. And they're stuck underwater to vegetation. And some larvae are consumed first by an aquatic organism, such as a midge or a mosquito, and they remain in a dormant pre-parasitic cyst stage until a host, like the cricket, is the definitive host, eats that. And then it becomes the source of nutrients for the horsehair worm. So it becomes an internal parasite and absorbs the nutrients from inside that cricket's body. It could take weeks or months for the immature, juvenile, parasitic larvae to become a sexually mature adult. And in order for it to mate and lay eggs, it needs to get to water, hence the dilemma. Scientific literature suggests that horsehair worms have the ability to hijack the host's mind and control it and manipulate its behavior so that cricket or the host of whatever arthropod that is will seek water and drown itself and get there so it could be released. So thinking back, did I pick up a zombie cricket? Yeah, I did. So once in the water, the horsehair worm exits head first through a wound in the abdomen of the host's butt. Or if it's stepped on the host, or if the host is stepped on, smashed, or in my case, fed to a tarantula, the horsehair worm will also be forced to evacuate. Again, my sample. Through the horsehair worms have been found in non-arthropod species. They've been recovered from dogs and cats and from human urine and vomit. They are not a threat to human health. And you may even encounter them when you're outdoors, somewhere where it's damp, swimming pools, puddles, watering troughs, or watering bowls. So you too can experience a horsehair worm. It was quite unsettling for me at first, but thinking about living in a world without arthropods and the parasites that they host, it would be a lot less intriguing. Embracing the curiosity unlocks endless learning and surprising mysteries. And as a scientist and science communicator, I found that the most cringe-worthy encounters often lead to the best stories. So thank you so much for listening, and stop and think before you step on a bug.
Amazing, Jody. So zombie crickets and mind-controlling parasites are definitely now being added to my list of potential fears. Although you make some excellent points about, why they're interesting and curious. And as you were telling your story, I just remembered when I was taking a zoology class in college, and we were learning about roundworms and passed around. I don't remember if it was Raven could probably tell us which worm it was. What kind of roundworm would fill like one organism would fill an entire jar?
One organism would fill a worm?
Yeah, like it was a jar o' worm, just one worm, but it was filling this entire jar.
I don't know. The roundworms I worked with were microscopic, so I'm not sure.
Okay,
Like
so
a nematode?
we'll figure it out. It was definitely a nematode of some kind. Yes, yes. But so it was passed around. It was a single organism that filled it, jar o' worm that got passed around. And then I went back to the dorm and I had spaghetti for lunch. And I couldn't resist just telling everyone about how, oh my gosh, this spaghetti looks like so much like the worm. And, it wasn't that unsettling to me, actually, but I managed to unsettle everyone else who was at my lunch table. So, so Raven, are you a catch and release? Or are you like a stomp on the bug and ask questions later?
Is there an alternative where I just pivot in the complete opposite direction and pretend I ever existed? Like, is that an option? I can't stand bugs.
Live and let live option. Yes, I did have, yes, that's
would
what I do.
rather die.
When I was in my little studio apartment in Madison at one point, and so it was like very small, but in my pantry closet, there was this like yay. So like I feel like it was taking up a good third of the square footage of the apartment because the apartment was small to begin with and the spider was very large, but it was in the pantry, so I could close that door. And I was like, unless I actually hear the doorknob turn, he's not getting out because he's not going to fit under that crack in the door because he's too big. So I named him Mr. Legs. We lived, he was my roommate for a little while. I can't actually remember how it ended, but it didn't have anything to do with me. So I don't know. But as you know, Raven, we talked about this. Centipedes are my thing that I just can't abide, can't deal with. And it's irrational, I know, but you had a good suggestion, I thought, which is that if they could just slow down a little bit, it would be okay.
Yeah, I think it's just the speed that they move. It just seems like it's too fast. It's too fast.
So if they could just slow it down a little, it would all be good. It would all be good. By the way, first costume change. Now, instead of just being a positive charge, I am a proton consisting of 2 up quarks and a down quark. Yes. If you notice, we have special guests coming through on Crystal's cam sometimes. She has 2 kitties, and they are, of course, very interested also in slamming and winning this $1,000 prize. So special guests coming through on the slam game. We also have. Do we have them on the screen at all? Not currently, but we have a couple of watch parties. There they are. We have a couple of watch parties. We usually call them our Slam Fam Cam. Right now, I think we just have about 1 fan in each location. So it's just our 1 Slam fan in Lincoln and our 1 Slam fan in Kearney. It's rainy here in Nebraska, so a lot of people probably are just curling up by the fire. There she is! It's our Slam fan! Oh my God, there's another one! We got another one!
Nice. Thank you for coming.
Very exciting. Okay. So some people gathered together to watch in person. Others of you may be watching just from your home in the comfort of your couch. And no matter where you are, we are so glad that you're tuning in to hear our scary science stories. So our next slammer, who I'm excited to introduce, is actually an experienced slammer. So we have a long history of doing science slams at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And in fact, the very first science slam in the United States happened, guess where? Lincoln, Nebraska. You might not have guessed that, but it's true. And Nicole was not part of that first slam in 2016, but she slammed I want to say it was 2018 or 2019. And so she is a seasoned slammer. She is now a scientist with the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and she's going to talk about a haunting legacy in an underground lab.
Hello, and thank you for having me back, Jocelyn. So the first science job that I worked after graduation was in a building with a morgue in it. You wouldn't know that it was a morgue from looking at it. It's just a room full of old documents that somebody should really get around to digitizing and some filing cabinets, and it just happens to have drains in the floor. And then one day on shift in the control room at the Atlas Linear Accelerator at Argonne National Laboratory, someone says, "Hey, you've seen the morgue, right? You should see the body count rooms." And I said, "The what?" Like you do. See, in the 1920s, young women could get a decent paying job painting numbers on watch faces in a factory. The numbers glowed in the dark because there was radium in the paint, and they were told to use their lips to keep a point on the paintbrush. The radium girls, they were called after they started to get sick and die, and it took decades to hold the companies responsible for these practices accountable for their actions, especially since they worked so hard to cover it up, including doing things like paying off coroners to say the women died of natural causes. One of the major companies involved was the Radium Dial Corp, which happened to just be a little over an hour's drive from Argonne in Ottawa, Illinois. And there was a need for a facility capable of handling radioactive people and cadavers and taking radiation measurements on them to prove the company was lying. You might see where this is going. So, after politely bothering the guy with the keys to the locked down, unused wing, he agreed to take me down to this. It's pretty remote, so you have to take kind of a long journey to get there. You go through a long, dimly lit concrete corridor where they store old lab machinery and equipment. There's a bunch of old power amplifiers. There's stuff you'd probably need a crane to get out of there. You wind your way through the next wing of this building, which is becoming increasingly empty. You resurface, exit the building, go outside, and enter another wing of the same building under an awning whose lettering has been long removed, but the bolt holes spell out Center for Human Radiobiology, which is the bottom of that image. You enter the other wing, you walk until you get to this locked area, which is completely unused except for one person who enters once a year to do an inspection to make sure nothing is flooding, and that is probably the scariest person of that day's year. You enter an antechamber with doors that are rounded and they seal like submarine doors. The air pressure in this room was kept at lower pressure than the areas outside of it. So if anybody had radioactive dust or materials on them, it wouldn't get pushed out from the air drafts when the doors opened. And then you pass out of that room, walk past a service elevator that looks like it hasn't been used since the 1960s. You descend a long, long staircase under very dim lighting. I cannot properly describe how this staircase feels like it's much longer than it really needs to be. And it also feels a lot steeper than it really needs to be. You go past some maintenance access areas full of very old pipes and a very old folding chair. And then you get to the waiting room. In the waiting room, you can tell that somebody really tried to make things welcoming, but virtually everything is made of metal because of the radioactivity of people who would be waiting in that room. And so it has a bench that's made of metal. It's covered in gray epoxy paint. It's not super comfortable looking. There's a bathroom with a shower and an incinerator toilet with instructions on the walls on how to incinerate your waste when you're done so that you're not putting radioactive human waste into the sewer pipes. And then there's one last dim corridor. The linoleum on the floor has a bunch of rust coming up from between the tiles from the metal plating underneath because it does in fact get flooded, which suggests maybe they should send someone down there more than once a year if anybody is willing to do that. And then there in the corridor, there are 3 doorways in the wall. Inside each narrow doorway is a small room with peeling 1940s wallpaper on the ceiling, a radio speaker on the wall, and a small metal bed frame, and the mounting assemblies for the equipment they use to take the full body radiation counts, or body count rooms, as my coworker called them. And as you step up into the room, which is small and dark, guy with the keys likes to tell you to push the switch on the wall, that it turns on the lights. It does not turn on the lights. At this point, if you're standing in the room thinking about this dark, tragic history and looking at the floral wallpaper on the ceiling, thinking about what it would have been like to be here and laying on that metal frame, listening to the radio and trying not to think about some very terrifying things, you might already find yourself unsettled. What happens next doesn't help. See, instead of turning on the lights, that switch engages a counterweight and pulley system that silently slides the very thick, heavy metal doors closed, and the little bit of light making it in from the corridor goes dark. When I tell people about this place, they usually ask me if it makes me sad to know about what happened. And while it makes me sad that it happened at all, it also makes me really proud to know that I worked in a place that was part of the effort to make sure this wouldn't happen ever again. And I want to leave you with two things. One, if you find yourself working in a really old building, ask questions about things like drains in the floor of the document room. You might never know the history directly under your feet. It's worth knowing, and it's worth remembering. And two, never trust the guy with the keys not to play tricks on you. Thank you.
Wow. So I was watching Raven's face during that story and the many manifestations of her facial expressions, while also trying to add my gluons to my my proton representation here. So the ironic thing about these gluons is that they're not glued on, but they are what sticks the quarks together in the proton. So you've seen them. We'll take the aluminum foil out of my ears now. So these are my gluons. So Raven, what do you think was the spookiest thing about that story?
Everything.
I'm gonna have to go with radioactive human waste. That just really hits you where you live.
You're very brave for going in there. I applaud your bravery. If anything, that is certainly not an environment I could immerse myself in at all.
I took lots of pictures, and I wish I had taken more at this point because there were a lot of creepy old things about that building. There, there was also near the control room, there was a door that was permanently locked and sealed off. And at night, there were banging noises and what sounded like wailing noises coming from behind that door. And like, in your head that it's probably from the steam pipe junction that's in there. But also, like, the door was permanently locked and the number had been torn off the wall, the room number. And it's just like, I don't necessarily want to find out like whether it was actually the steam pipes or not. So it's a lot of very eerie old building stuff, but then finding about the count rooms and the morgue was just another level.
Yeah, I mean, just eerie old building stuff can be spooky enough without the addition of radiation. And then the story of the Radium Girls, which is such a profound, amazing, sad story, like to hear about and important to know about, but that you had this personal connection to it. I don't know. That would have been too intense for me. I agree with Raven. You're brave and doing important work, Nicole.
It's not what you'd expect working on the beamline at a particle accelerator, certainly.
That's true. The equipment at the beam line is probably not as fancy as the coffee roaster at the coffee roaster where our Lincoln Watch Party is housed. That is way more high tech than, or at least more high tech looking, probably impressive looking than the tech at the beam accelerator. Thank you so much for
Entirely
that
true.
amazing, although extremely creepy story. But that is what we asked of you for. It was Scary Science Stories. So our next slammer on the way now is coming to us from California Riverside. So even though it's University of Nebraska is hosting the slam, we have slammers from across the country. And Hannah Chu is from the University of California Riverside, and I'm really excited to hear her cautionary tale of field work gone awry.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So my story is about one of my scary fieldwork experiences that now serves as a reminder to me that safety is always number one, no matter how harmless a field experience may seem. And just to preface, I will mention death and maggots. So if that creeps you out too much, feel free to step away. Please take care of yourself. So let's get into it. I work with a group of flies, commonly called blowflies or bottle flies. And you might be familiar with these flies. They're shiny green, shiny blue, and can be found near dumpsters or flying around your dog's poop on a hot day. So blowflies are very attracted to rotten, smelly, decomposing things because their immature life stage requires decomposing animal tissue, basically dead things, to complete their development into adulthood. And if you haven't already guessed, when these flies are in their immature stage, they're often referred to as maggots. And I have an example here, so look away if it freaks you out. So I have some maggots here crawling. So because maggots rely on these decomposing animal tissue, blowflies are often associated with death and are studied in forensic context. So this is the family of flies that are referenced in crime TV shows like Bones or CSI when insect evidence is involved. So blowflies can find a body within minutes of death and lay their eggs. So their development or the developmental stage of a maggot becomes really valuable in forensic investigations, specifically to determine a time since death. However, maggot development is very dependent on environmental factors like temperature and also on the species ID of the fly. Specifically, species ID matters not just for timing, but also for understanding whether a body may have been moved. For example, if someone is killed in Arizona, where species A and B are present, but then the body is moved to California, where only species B is found, that's probably a clue that if you find species A on the body, that the crime likely occurred in Arizona. So this brings me to my work in Southern California, where I'm doing a blowfly survey in the area to see what species are around here. The last one was done 60 years ago. And although there was a recent survey done in 2019, it only captured Los Angeles County, which is about, I'm like an hour east of LA, where I am right now. So we didn't have the data from this area. So I conducted fieldwork in some of these more remote areas in California, including Joshua Tree National Park. So here's an image of the desert, one of my field sites. And although the park is very popular with visitors, I had to access some of the more isolated areas far away from the usual trails where visitors were. And there's also no cell service in the park. So I did have a satellite phone, never had to use it, luckily. And to collect these blowflies, I set out these small inconspicuous traps. So here's an example. It's about the size of my head. And we chose these because they're discreet and visitors hopefully wouldn't mess with them if they saw them. But the plan was that nobody would find these traps or mess with them. Well, surprise, surprise, they were so inconspicuous that one day in the middle of the summer, where temperatures reach up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, I was coming back to pick up my traps and I could not find one of them. I had hopped out of the truck with no water, no phone. I was like, I'm just going to get out, grab this trap and head back to get the next one. Well, I can't find this trap. So I'm starting to wander around. It's been about 20 minutes. I'm starting to get thirsty. I don't have a communication device. Starting to get scared a little bit, but I'm like, it's fine. I'll just get my trap whenever I find it. Unfortunately, at that moment, I also remembered that there was a hiker in the area that had gone missing in the last week. So that's when I start getting a little bit more nervous. Time is starting to pass. I'm really dehydrated at this point. And one, I could potentially find this hiker injured, or worst case scenario, come across their dead body. And two, I might meet the same fate as this hiker because I was irresponsible in my field work and just wandered out there with no communication or water. Luckily, a little bit more wandering, I did find this trap. But when I did come across my trap, something, potentially a vulture or maybe a snake, that I have actually encountered snakes before at this site, had knocked the entire trap over. The bait jar was empty. Luckily, I came at a time there were still flies in the trap, so I still had usable data. So I quickly gathered all my materials. I carefully walked back to the truck, hoping I wouldn't encounter whatever it was that snagged the bait, and drove on my way. Got home safely. But that was just one moment where I was reminded of how scary field work can be when I'm alone and I let down my guard and think everything's going to be fine. It's just another day in the field. And hopefully it reminds you as well, if you do field work, to stay safe and always be prepared, even if it seems like you're just taking a 5-minute walk away from your vehicle or wherever you are, to always be prepared for the worst. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah. Well, that story worked on so many levels. I mean, like you've got the blowfly / maggot creepy factor, but then you've also got the stranded in the desert, possibly, missing hiker. Are you going to stumble across it? Are you going to be, what ate the bait? Like that was an emotional roller coaster, but I'm glad it all turned out okay.
Can you show us the maggots again?
Yeah, sorry. I hope the lighting is okay.
Those are some maggots.
They don't move too fast, so I think it's okay.
That's true. Centipedes could take a cue. Oh, I just lost my down quark. In case you were wondering, this is a charm quark and a charm anti-quark, because I learned today that whereas it was previously thought that protons only consisted of 2 upside down quark, there's actually, and charm is my favorite. Well, no, strange quark is probably my favorite quark because, well, for obvious reasons. But charm quark is good too. So I have a charm quark and a charm anti-quark that are added to the mix. So
there's 5 quarks.
Well, here's the thing, as I understand it, based upon my reading of this Quanta article within the last hour and a half, mind you, the charm quarks and anti-quarks sometimes pop in and out of existence because that's the way with matter and antimatter, right? They like cancel each other out. And so they're just kind of this dynamic process that's happening all the time. So there's like charm quark, charm anti-quark, no more charm quark, so they're big. That's the weird thing. They're really big, these charm quarks and anti-quarks. So that's what I have learned in the last hour and a half. I do have some background in physics, actually. Like I know a lot more about physics than the average person on the street, but a lot less about physics than is apparently necessary to understand what a proton is, let alone how to represent a proton with a costume that you have like from the neck up. So it was discussed before we started the stream, because you all can't see the Zoom room, but so Raven had named herself Dr. Raven Baxter, aka Electron Cloud. So then I was getting ready to name myself Professional Proton, and I thought, okay, definitely not professional. Nothing about this is professional. So I was going to go with Amateur Ton, but then it was suggested that perhaps I'm a semi-proton. So I said that's a little bit aspirational still. I'm not sure I'm quite at that level yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Other thoughts on maggots, Raven? Any fun facts that you want to share with us?
Fun facts. I don't have any fun facts, but I do have a fun story from college. It's has to do with fruit flies, though. But yeah, we did experiments on fruit flies, and I'll never forget walking into the fruit fly lab and seeing 2 of my classmates in there just eating pizza. Just gotta crack the box of pizza open. There's flies everywhere. They're going to town on the pizza. And I opened the door, observed, and then just closed the door and turned around and left. So hopefully we're not eating pizza in the fly lab, but to each his own.
I worked in a fruit fly lab too as an undergrad. Shout out to Dr. Alan Christensen at UNL who let me sort fruit flies with a paintbrush by eye color. So exciting times. Yes. And you had to gas the fruit flies to put them to sleep. I mean, not put them to sleep like you do, an animal, but fruit flies are animals. Okay. Dial it, bring it back, Jocelyn, bring it back. Like you would a pet. You're not putting them to sleep in that sense, but like they just go down for a nap. You just put them down for a nap, and then you sort them according to eye color, and then you put them in, the groups that you want them to be in so that you can control the crosses that are happening, and then that's the magic. So I love hearing about that. I love hearing about your maggots and your fieldwork cautionary tale, Hannah. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I'm glad you made it out and live to tell the tale of that experience. And I'm glad that you're doing important work with blowflies because that's important too. Yes, yes. So we're at the halfway mark. We're 3 slammers down and 3 to go. And I have to tell you, this next slammer is the 2-time defending champion of live streamed Science Slam. So when we had the first No Coast SciComm Science Slam in 2022, Crystal took the grand prize. We had another kind of one-off event in 2023. Again, she took home the grand prize. So no pressure, but it could be a three-peat. This is Crystal Uminsky of the Rochester Institute of Technology, who is, if you don't get the reference now, you'll get it by the end of her slam talk, gonna speak on how you gotta fight for the right score interpretation. Take it away, Crystal.
All right, well, thank you for that nice introduction. My name is Crystal, and I do what's called biology education research. And it's not quite as scary and slimy and spooky and scaly as some of these other slams that we've heard before. Education research is a little bit more of like a slow burn psychological thriller. And there actually is a lot of psychology in education research. A lot of what I do is looking at how students are taking tests and the behaviors that they're doing. And if you're taking a test, a lot of times we go in, if you get an A, great, you know the content. You knew the stuff inside and out. If you got a D or an F, maybe you need to study a little bit more next time. And it is something that underlies this principle called test score validity. And the idea is that your scores represent what you actually know. It's this assumption that your scores are a good reflection of what's actually in your brain. But the scary thing is that I found that assumption is quite often wrong in so many ways. It is wrong in pretty much every testing condition I've looked at. I've looked at low stakes tests where there's not really a high point value associated with these scores, and some students will just rush through the test. They spend such a little amount of time on it. They get these really low scores, and that's likely underestimating what they actually know. In some other cases where it's a high stakes test and there's a little bit more point value, and especially when they're done outside of class and they're not being proctored, some students spend an extraordinary amount of time on these tests. They get these really high test scores. And to me, that indicates that they probably were cheating. And that score is likely an overestimate of what they know. More recently, I've looked at students doing multiple choice tests, and I give them multiple choice, and I say, pick your answer. And then I say, well, draw a picture of what that answer looks like. And I found that they're often getting these questions right for the wrong reason. Their multiple choice answer doesn't actually match up with the picture that they drew. Their pictures show that they fundamentally misunderstand the biological principle that we're testing them about. So all this test score validity, to borrow from The Princess Bride, we keep using these test scores, and I do not think it means what you think it means. And why this is scary is because we use test scores for making really big decisions. We make test scores about students, we make test scores about classes, we make test scores about instructors, we make decisions about test scores that affect schools. Test scores affect a lot of different things in education. So if we're using these flawed assumptions, we're using these invalid test scores, that is scary. So for things to make sure that we have valid test scores, we want to make sure we're collecting data evidence so we can interpret test scores in light of students' test-taking motivation. We want to make sure we're collecting data about the multiple choice tests that we're using. Are these valid measures of what students actually know? So to drive home this point about how important test score interpretations are, how important it is to use valid test score data, I'm going to do my best Beastie Boys here. So I'm going to do this a cappella. I'm going to try my best here. And we're going to kick it. Been studying in school. I got data to show. Bum, 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 bum. Use tests to ask students, what do you know? Bum, 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 but oh my goodness, blanking on the words. Panic. Uh, oh my goodness. I'm going to start that over. I'm so sorry. I use tests to ask students, what do you know? Bum, 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 bum. Uh, you got the right reason. I did not practice this enough. Um, ah, let me start this over. I'm panicking here. Getting nervous in front of Raven, who also does a lot of science songs. I use tests to ask students, what do you know? Bum, 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 bum. Select the answer, then show your work. Bum, 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 bum. Right for the wrong reason, gonna go berserk. Bum, 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 bum. You gotta fight for the right interpretation. You look at the data and you say, no way. Bum, 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 bum. Here at the slam, we don't got all day. Bum, 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 bum. Your scores should match what you know for real. Bum, 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 bum. Score's not valid, it's got no appeal. Bum, 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 bum. You gotta fight for the right interpretation. You gotta fight for the right interpretation. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing. You outdo yourself every single time. And by the way, everyone, I think that Crystal should get bonus points for managing to pull that together while also having to watch me do this in the Zoom room. Like that's a little distracting. So I should really have turned my camera off, but I was relying on the Zoom screen to see what it looks like. And as you can see, it's very important that each of the pieces ended up in exactly the right place. So we'll come back to this, whatever the hell this is, in a minute. But let's talk about Crystal and that musical creation of hers. So Raven, she said she was nervous to do it in front of you, and you are a very accomplished musical scientist. But give us your review of Crystal's performance.
First of all, I don't even remember the words to my own song. So I always get tickled when other people can sing them back to me. And I'm like, I didn't even remember the lyrics. So
I can actually attest to that because when you were here in April and you did we did a little fireside chat, at the end, I foolishly said, "Oh, Raven, do you want to like wrap us out? Do you want to do like part of your, coronavirus, wipe it down?" And Raven was like, no, I do not remember the words right now. So, so we had a dance party instead.
yeah, I really love it. I think that, storytelling and music is such a great way to communicate, not just science, but research in general. So kudos to you. This was amazing. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
See, you had no reason to be nervous, Crystal. It was just the proton that was getting to you. So yeah, let's address the proton in the room, I guess. I can explain this, which is the final phase of my devolution, if you want to call it that, into protonery. This was my attempt, again, I'm going to blame it on this Quanta article that I read, to conjure the last phase in which many quarks and antiquarks seethe in a roiling particle sea. So
Wow.
it looks like a 3-year-old did my hair, but trust me, it's just all of the quarks and antiquarks seething in a roiling particle sea. It's a very advanced thing, even though it looks like this. And so I'm going to just take care of this now. We're just going to, dispense with that's my proton costume. That's the final phase. Now I'm just going to be Jocelyn again. Thank you for your support in this. Oh, well, we'll get that later. Okay. I also loved, tell us who it is, Raven. Who's our special guest?
This is Carbon, last name Bond. He is a toy poodle and my assistant. He has enjoyed all of your presentations so far, and he says thank you and good job.
Good old Carbon. He agrees. You got to fight for the right interpretation.
You do.
And I love that because it illustrates the many different ways that we can think about what a scary story is. And I think that is pretty scary if we're investing all of this value and worth and resources behind what the test scores say, and in fact they do not mean what we think they mean. So she got the Beastie Boys, she got the she got the Princess Bride, she's checking all the boxes. Thank you so much, Crystal. That was another performance. Like I said, every time you just outdo your previous performances. So I'm so glad. Way to stick with it too. Way to model resilience. You know, we all have those moments, and having one of those moments when you're on a live stream is rough, but you brought it home so great in the end. So thank you so much, Crystal. If there's anybody who could follow that, and there aren't many people who could follow that, but if there's anybody who could follow that, it's going to be our next slammer, who is also an experienced slammer, two-time slammer, and a soon-to-be PhD student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in plant biology. And the title of her slam talk is Hiss or Hug: The Eerie Parallels Between Snakes and Toddlers.
Well, hi everyone. I just want to say you do not want to hear me sing. That will automatically be the spooky story. Basically, I just wanted to tell you a little story. So, me and my partner right now, we are currently looking to buy our first home. And, we do all the exciting stuff. We walk through, we try to imagine our stuff in it. Where are we going to put the couch? Where are we going to put the puzzle table? The important things. And as we're walking down the street, we saw this empty stroller just sitting on the sidewalk. Now, creepy as it is, you just don't ask questions when you're from Nebraska. But you know what's worse than an empty stroller? One that actually has a toddler in it. And that's because toddlers are absolutely terrifying. Look, I'm not a parent. I mean, look at me. I'm not a parent at all. No one wants extra me in the world. But I've seen the toddlers in action because you know what they do and like haunted dolls have in common? Unpredictability. You're never gonna know what they're gonna do next. One minute they're sitting quietly, the next minute they're charging at you with really sticky hands and strong opinions on all the wrong things. I would rather face a ghost in a dark room in the middle of the night than a determined toddler that is trying to refuse to share a snack. Now, this might sound irrational, which is true. I don't know what wire isn't connected up in my brain because one thing that I absolutely love, but a lot of people are afraid of, is snakes. I've done a lot of demonstrations with snakes, the animals that made Indiana Jones himself shiver. And snakes aren't as bad as people mean them out to be. I hold snakes every day, but like toddlers, that's a completely different story. And I know Crystal was showing off her cat, Dr. Raven was showing off her dog. Um, this is Ploob. She has been chilling in my lap the whole time. She's a ball python. She's overweight. She wheezes because she is so overweight. It's not her hissing, it's just her needed to be on Atkins. Um, this is basically, I wanted to kind of go over some of the comparisons I've noticed between toddlers and snakes. You can see that she's very interested in my microphone, so I apologize if you hear a little whisper in your ear. That's from her, not me. And, it might be ironic to, stand in front of a crowd with a snake draped over my neck and, on my arm and say, there's no reason to fear them. They're beautiful creatures. They're more afraid of you. But if you handed me a toddler, my voice is going to go up 2 octaves higher because, the more I think about it and the more I realize they have a lot of common. So just hear me out before you grab your pitchforks. Snakes, they're unpredictable. You can see this girl right here. She's trying to get into my armpit. Um, she always tries to do that. I know she's looking for warmth. I just think it's a weird fetish. I don't know. And, they're quick to strike if you don't approach them with the right caution. With toddlers, it's pretty much the same. You approach them too fast, bam, full meltdown. And just like a snake, you have to earn the toddler's trust, okay? You don't want to just stick your hand out and assume you know what they want. No, you got to stand back and you got to wait for them to be ready to approach you. You never look them in the eye. Okay, sometimes you got to speak their language, which isn't audible English at all. And, maybe they'll leave you with a bite mark as well. It's anybody's guess. Now, here's my takeaway. Maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't fear either. The toddler or the snake. You just have to give them a little space, watch your footing, and never, under any circumstances, make any sudden movements. But besides, if I can handle a snake, maybe a sticky, screeching, nasty toddler isn't too far out of my comfort zone, so I can try. And for now, we left that stroller right where it was on the side of the sidewalk because some fears are just based and best faced one sidewalk at a time. Thank you guys for attending the live stream.
Amazing, Riley and special guest getting her exercise, gonna working on her fitness. That's good to see for her. Thank you so much. So Raven, snake or toddler? If you have to choose one, which are you gonna choose?
Snake.
You would take a snake over a toddler also? Okay.
A baby snake, because they're basically worms.
Okay, what about a toddler snake? I don't know if that even makes any sense because the toddler comes from toddle, which kind of implies that you have two legs and snakes don't have any legs, but
I don't know.
or a toddler, a human toddler with a snake.
No. No.
Not doing that. I don't know. Snakes for some reason do not bother me. And I think it all comes down to the number of legs. Like, centipedes have too many legs, snakes don't have any, so I feel a little okay with it, There was a snake in our basement once, and I was like, oh, look, it's a snake. We named her Betsy. We took her back outside. It was fine. But yeah, I think the amount of adrenaline released into my system is directly proportional to the number of legs a creature has, probably. So I'm good with snakes, but I'm okay with toddlers too most of the time. Now, middle school students, that really invokes terror in a lot of people. Middle school students are my jam if it happens.
Another parallel between toddlers and snakes, they're both surprisingly strong. They both have superhuman strength, I think. Try to wrangle something out of a toddler's hands, you're not going to get it.
Well, and I do want to add that this girl, since she's overweight, she's escaped a couple times. There's a lock on her enclosure, but she's figured out how to get her fat butt in between the sliding door and the enclosure to pop it off its tracks. So now we have metal brackets holding that together. Yeah.
I love it.
So the next time if you are afraid of snakes, if you do have a fear, then, and if you happen to like toddlers a lot, then just picture a toddler's head on the snake the next time you see it. And think about this talk and the parallels between snakes and toddlers and how hissing and hugging is really all just part of the same natural wonder. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Riley. Now, before we invite our last slammer to take the stage, I want to remind you that you get to decide who wins this thing. So the power is in your hands. I would say it is the most important vote you'll cast this week. I don't think we can claim that it's the most important vote you'll cast beyond that. There's a pretty important vote coming up, but it is important. So make sure that you think carefully and weigh this decision. With great power comes great responsibility. After the final slammer has slammed, our producer Vince Rule, who rules, will put up the QR code and also the link for voting. So yes, here it is right here. So this poll will open once the last slammer has slammed. So no fair voting now and then leaving. You got to watch through the final slam and then make your decision. And there's also a link in the description on YouTube and wherever you're watching this streaming where you can find the voting page. So it is time for our final slammer, who is also an experienced slammer. She has participated in one of our Student Research Day slams once before, and she is, oh my gosh, I didn't ask you how to pronounce your last name before this. I know we've been over it before, but I'm looking at it now and realizing I can't. Knizovic. It's something that's not that, but it's close to that. She'll tell you. Emma, she's like Cher. She's just Emma of UNL Entomology. Will talk about how help, everything is going wrong, and that's perfectly fine. What a message to end on. Help, I can't pronounce her name, but everything is perfectly fine. Take it away, Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Knizovic, and my spooky, scary story starts back in spring of 2023 when my roommate, research partner, friend Paige and I were both bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and less hair dye damage. And we're about to start our first undergrad research project under Dr. Judy Smart. We're eager to study like not only our research subject, bumblebee behavior when exposed to low doses of pesticides, but the process of research itself. And we quickly learned that a good amount of research is going wrong. Like we'd heard that before, of course, but when it happens to you and like it kind of hits you in the face, it's different. And it did hit us in the face. Like the first day of our field observations, I got stung in the nose and Paige got stung in the neck. So the bumbles weren't too happy about being exposed to pesticides, which is fair enough. Speaking of our field observations, our first round of the project involved field cages with bumble and honeybees set up in a contaminated environment. We chose the historically driest month to do these observations in. And of course, when we drive up there, our tents are all caved in from rain. So we problem solved the logical solution and made makeshift spears, had a little photo shoot, and then stabbed the drainage holes in the roofs. We brought them back to the lab for future use. You know, we're gonna be proactive in case it happens again. But we later found out that the lab had a no undergrads making weapons policy, so that was not our finest moment. But just like with the spears, when things go wrong, the solution was often to get crafty. Along with the spears, we made little hats for the hives to further protect them from the rain. There's a lot of arts and crafts in science. It's pretty fun. Each day when we go up there for with the cages, we'd put those crafting skills to work, securing it with the tents with zip ties, the duct tape, and T-posts. But unfortunately, all the duct tape in the world didn't hold up to 40-mile-per-hour winds that toppled our tents and blew our hives every which way. When we couldn't see the tents from down the road driving up, we got worried. When we pulled up to the field, we began running about in a frenzy, assessing the damage and frantically and shooting off photos to Judy, being like, hey! But we had to pack up all the hives and go back. And that project was crashed by Nebraskan weather. But it was around this time that we started sharing our research woes with everyone else. And we were like, it rained so much, and our tents kept falling apart, and they all blew apart, and all of our bees escaped, and we kept getting a welcome to research every time we'd share this. It felt like we'd been welcomed enough already, in our opinion, but this kept happening. Each time we'd share how everything went wrong, professors and other students shared their own story of entire colonies of insects rotting or getting eaten, or years of samples defrosting, supplier specimens shipping mix-ups. Everyone had something, or many somethings of things that went wrong. We continued on with the project, adapted to the first set of projects brought into the lab, and ran into more problems. Our bumblebee colonies behaved oddly. They didn't feed when we wanted them to feed, didn't lay brood where we wanted them to, and altogether acted like bees and animals that are going to do their own bee and animal thing, and not our please do this thing for the research project thing. And we tried again. We got a lot of escaped bees, a lot of things going wrong, but we tried again, and more things went wrong. But everything goes wrong, and that's perfectly okay. That's how we figure things out. So everything going wrong is welcomed. So thank you so much for listening to my spooky story. But I think things can get spookier. 'Twas the night before you care, and all through the hives, the bees, they were buzzing, and so were our scientists' minds. What plans they had of a scheme so straight, of observations of bumblebees in a contaminated place, trapped in tents. The bees started about their foraging, and our scientists set about their worrying. From the very start, these tents seemed destined to fall apart. Ooh! But through blood, sweat, and tears, and miles of duct tape, our scientists persevered, attempting to thwart the bees' escape. The bees were persistent as well, protesting their poison food by inflicting wounds that itched and swelled. But fearsome of all, a storm with great 40-mile squalls. Their experiments slain, our adventurers returned, spirits low, where their mentors told them tales of research pains and woes. Welcome to research, a chorus of scientists declared, and our young protagonists set forth again, embracing the coming research snares. Thank you.
That video should be, and particularly the last minute, of course, should be required viewing for every new researcher. They should just need to pull up a chair and listen. This is how it goes, and that is how it's done. That is what makes a slam so magical and what a great opportunity compared with other typical forms of science communication we get to see. So, if you're attending the SciComm conference and you're tuning in and you're thinking about whether you might ever want to participate in a slam or whether you might want to organize one at your institution or your location, do it, because this is what you get. You get amazing stories like this. And so thank you so much, Emma. That was super epic. Raven, final thoughts before we go to the voting. Raven, aka Electron Cloud, aka I see you have now added another name, Liltron.
You already know. But yeah, Emma, that was a great story, and I think it had a great ending. I really enjoyed it. Every single one of you brought something unique and very special to this spooktacular competition. I really enjoyed all of the different stories that you told. I experienced a wide range of emotions tonight. We got pumped up with some rap music. We got creeped out in some old basement of a lab facility. We saw live maggots today. A snake is in the building. Oh my gosh. And we talked about all kinds of bugs and things. And whew, what a ride this is then. I'm really interested to see who wins. This is so difficult.
I know it's intense. It's intense. The competition, and you know what, Emma, your slam talk actually brought us kind of full circle back to the topic of last 2 years ago, our first No Coast SciComm Science Slam, which was about how things go wrong in science and what the role of wrongness is in science and how it's so important to have those experiences of being wrong and to then carry on through them. So such a good moral to and a good takeaway to end on as well. It sounds like y'all are voting, you out there in the audience. So if you haven't gotten your votes in, make sure that you do. We're all going to vote now. It sounds like things are pretty close. This is tense. I don't even know what to think. I don't know what to think about what's going to happen.
Oh boy.
The suspense. Vince who rules, who is producing this slam, is giving us updates in the Zoom chat. So he says it's close, real close, actually. ... So those of you who are continuing to deliberate, this is a weighty decision. Remember, most important vote you'll cast this week. But yeah, I agree with Raven. Just so many different perspectives on what constitutes a scary story, for one thing, and also like why we shouldn't be that scared of a lot of these things that we traditionally think of are scary. Why we possibly should be more scared about things that don't initially seem scary, like relying too much on test scores that don't actually reflect what we think they reflect. Okay, so we're going to give you another minute or so to wrap up the voting, and then we're going to cut it off because we can't take the suspense anymore. So take a moment, make your decision, register your vote. $1,000 is at stake.
I would like to vote for Jocelyn's best proton. Personally, my favorite were the quarks. Well, the up and down ones. And then you had the strange and the anti-strange.
Okay, so this actually sit down. Yeah, that's right. Okay. You also, like, you would think somebody who relatively understands physics, as I purport to do, would be able to understand like the whole mirror image backward thing, on Zoom, but no. Yeah, this one's my favorite too, I think, mainly because I could still take a drink while I was wearing this one. Probably the most practical, but yeah, this is a good one. It's a good one.
Are some of those supposed to be pointing up?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I don't think we're protons anymore.
No, we're not in proton land anymore, Toto or Carbon. Who's playing the part of, yeah, thank you. Fact checked my costume. That's good. We need that
The
live
fate of the
fact-checking.
universe depends on those things being on the right direction.
It really does. It really does. Okay, so I'm gonna count down from 10 now, and when I get to 0, the polling is gonna close. So get your votes cast. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off. Oh, she did it! Three-peat!
Whoa!
Tossing my forks in the air. So excited I
Congratulations!
am.
Congratulations.
Well earned, Crystal. Well earned. So now that you're a 3-time slam champion, what are you going to do next? Don't say go to Disneyland.
Oh, try for round 4.
Always thinking ahead to the next challenge. You should organize a slam in Rochester, right? Because you have the experience and the knowledge of what it takes. And so if you want to do a live stream slam, Vince Rule, who rules, who's producing the slam right now, will help you. Because he does slams or not slams per se, but events. He does live stream events all over. So you don't have to be in Lincoln to have him help you out. Well, thank you everybody who took the time to attend and listen and vote. If you're still with us, enter in the chat wherever you happen to be watching this. What some of your fears are, your big fears are. What would your scary science story be, or just your scary story if you were to tell one? Anyone want to fess up?
Here?
Let's see. No, I was watching the YouTube chat.
Oh, okay.
Missing grant proposal deadlines. Yes. That is a real fear. That is a real fear. I have a love-hate relationship with deadlines because I really need them, but also they're hard. Okay, so Jillian, who is an arachnologist and said she loves to ask arachnologists their fears because most of them are not scared of spiders. I think that's probably true. Is afraid of the deep ocean and space. Afraid of seeing our sea cucumber barf its guts. Well, thanks, Tara. Now I'm afraid of that too. I don't even have a sea cucumber, but the idea of a sea cucumber barfing its guts is not appealing. Oh wow. I already told you centipedes, but on the theme of space, missing data, yes. On the theme of space, I really heat death. I don't know if it's not like, it's more like you said, Crystal, like the slow burn psychological thriller. If any of you read Katie Mack's The End of Everything about various theories about how the universe might end, give me a big crunch any day, man. I mean, a clear ending and then it's done, but like heat death is just so existentially depressing. So I'm not a fan of heat death. Well, thank you, those of you in the chat who are also sharing some of your fears, science related and otherwise. And if you happen to be someone who is not into science and for whom science itself is a big, scary thing, I hope that you learn today from this diversity of stories that science, while it can be scary, is also a lot of fun and definitely not boring. Final thoughts, Raven.
Well, congratulations, Crystal. Everyone did an amazing job. Honestly, I know I would vote for everyone. Everyone had my vote. But Crystal, congratulations on your third win. This is really incredible. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Vince Rule, who rules, for producing the slam in fine form as he always does. Thank you to my celebrity co-host and my oppositely charged particle, Dr. Raven, the science maven. It is always great to hang and do shenanigans with you. And those of you who are participating in the conference, we'll see you tomorrow for the last day. And if you're not participating in the conference, if you're just watching the slam, then good for you, and subscribe to our channel and you can find other cool science videos to watch. So thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.